What's up, folks? This is Justin from Books, Bricks, and Boards. And today I'm going to be talking about a setting that is very different from the known world setting of Mystara. This is a setting created by TSR back in the late 80s, and it asks the question, what is below the surface? I was introduced to this setting from a new gamer that I'd met. He said he wanted to play an elf in my game. I said, fine. He said, this elf doesn't cast spells. I said, okay, BECMI, that's not really common, but sure, that's fine. Oh yeah, and he uses a flame pistol.
Bye.
I said, well, I don't really do the homebrew stuff, so we're going to have to pass on the flame pistol. He said, no. It's a black lore elf. I said, do you mean Blackmore? He says, no, black lore. And that began my descent into the Hollow World. Hopefully, you'll have just as good an experience descending into that realm as I did. So without further ado, this is Beyond the BECMI Boxes, Episode 2, The Hollow World. If you are enjoying the content and would like to see more of it to come, please be sure to like, share, comment, and subscribe. If you want to chat about games with folks that know the difference between a beast man and a brute man, head on over to the Books, Bricks, and Boards Discord server.
Do it!
Link in the description. History of the Hollow World. With the Gazetteer series, TSR had explored an enormous amount of space on the known world, with 12 official entries and the Dawn of the Emperor's box set. By that point, only 2 official Gazetteer products remained to be printed, the Shadow Elves and the Atragan clans. With the 1991 Rules Cyclopedia prepared to bring new life into the BECMI line, the question was, where would they go from here? Luckily, the author of the Rule Cyclopedia, Aaron Alston, provided the answer via the Hollow World box set in 1990. Initially released as the single box set, the Hollow World would cover the inner sphere of the known world with its eternal sun and its incredibly diverse group of civilizations populating it. The whole thing seems pretty campy on its face, and I'll demonstrate this with this pitch. It's a center-of-the-earth collection of extinct civilizations from all eras of technology living side by side. Oh, and by the way, it was created by a giant sentient T-Rex.
Oh, I'm going for fearsome here, but I just don't feel it.
Knowing that, if you're still with me, you are my kind of gamer. The box set provided maps, history, monsters, character options, and a generous set of adventures to get the ball rolling. Luckily, TSR didn't stop with the box set, even though that is the primary focus of this video. In 1990, the same year the box set came out, they released the first 2 adventures of a trilogy, which would be concluded in the final chapter a year later. Those were Night Whale, Night Rage, and Night Storm, covering adventures in Azka, Nithya, and Shajapur, rough equivalents to the Aztec, Egyptian, and Indian mythologies. Beyond the adventures, TSR released 3 Hollow World reference products, each a softcover 2-book product, similar in size and design to the Creature Crucible series. These were released over the years of 1991 and 92 and covered the previously mentioned Azka and Nithya cultures, as well as the Millennian Empire, an approximation of the Greeks. The final Hollow World release was a standalone adventure titled The Millennian Scepter in 1992, which dealt with the unpopular metaplot from the Wrath of the Immortals box set. That same year, Warriors of the Eternal Sun was released for the Sega Genesis, set in the Hollow World. But past the release of that game, there has been few mentions of the Hollow World at all, though the crew of the Princess Ark did make their way to the Hollow World on that trip. What's in the box? The Hollow World box set is a typical TSR campaign setting of its era, meaning it has a metric ton of material inside. Included are 4 full-color maps of the Hollow World, one of which depicts the Hollow World in relation to the known world. Additionally included are 3 books. A 128-page DM source book covering history, geography, and the pantheon of the Hollow World, a 64-page player's book providing rules for playing existing characters in the Hollow World, as well as creating heroes native to the setting. Lastly, there is a 32-page adventure book with multiple adventures and adventure seeds, as well as monsters native to the setting. Let's start with the maps, as these will help give some perspective to just how closely packed the numerous civilizations of the Hollow World actually are. As you can see, these are the same color fold-out style hex maps that were common to the Gazetteer series products. The quality and scope is enough to cover many years of campaign play, but the open areas remain sufficient to drop new additions in without upsetting the proverbial apple cart. It should be noted, this is the weakest aspect of the digital version, as they just don't translate well to that format. Without getting too far along, let's jump into the part that for many will be the most intriguing, that being the player's book. From the iconic cover to the list of spells that don't work in the Hollow World, it is immediately apparent that we aren't in Karamikos anymore. You see, the Hollow World is kind of a preservation museum for civilizations lost to time, and in order to prevent development of technology or casting aside one's cultural history, the curator of said museum, an immortal dinosaur named Kaw, cast a spell of preservation on the entire thing, but for now, it is sufficient to know that this magical barrier makes spells related to summoning, mind control, teleportation, and resurrection completely useless. There are also a whole list of spells which work, but are completely unknown to the natives. These are mostly offensive spells like Magic Missile, Fireball, and Lightning Bolt. Of course, this restriction on spells is of small consequence when you consider that only magic users with 16 intelligence or clerics with 16 wisdom may even cast spells. If that weren't enough, it is explicitly stated that only natural scores of 16 or more can be casters. So even if your DM is kind enough to allow a point swapping, no go for Hollow World casters. You might be wondering, where does that leave our elven companions? Well, if they don't meet the requirement, they become elven warriors, basically elves without the casting, but with a more forgiving XP table. Unfortunately, they keep the D6 hit dice. There is a short section of text on Shaman and Wokani for the monster races, allowing those who meet the requirement to add clerical or magical spells to their repertoire for some additional XP each level. This is pretty much the same as seen in the Creature Crucible series. An interesting aspect of the preservation spell, it creates such a cultural loyalty that even if one were to travel elsewhere, to adopt customs, armor, or weapons of another culture will result in not only losing any cultural benefits that you've gained, but also receiving only 1/3 of the XP for 3 full levels while you struggle with your identity crisis. Yikes. Sure, that plate mail looks effective, but I'll stick to my club and loincloth, thank you very much. This is just reinforcing the explanation for just how these different cultures remain unchanged for thousands of years. Kudos to them for making the mechanics match the fluff. Next, we have 10 pages of information on the general skills system from the Gazetteer series. I'm not a big fan, but they are a working skill system. Some tables will swear by them. I just rather do the straight ability checks. Of interesting note is the strange placement of certain skills, like including Hear Noise under Dexterity. Again, I'd rather just do ability score rolls and be done with it. The next section is by far the largest and for me the most interesting, entitled Character Backgrounds. It covers 21 different cultures in 20 pages, providing lists of cultural weapons and armor, customs, and in many cases, restrictions and benefits. While most are variations on existing classes, the background acting as an overlay to the existing rules, like a kit from 2nd edition AD&D, there are also 5 monster classes with their own XP tables and saving throws. While I can't find an explicit expression of this, my assumption is the monster classes use the monster hit matrix, as it is not explained in their entry which matrix to use, and that is how monster classes worked in other similar TSR BECMI releases of the time. All in all, for character options, we get Antalians, which are Vikings, Azkans, which are Aztecs, Beastmen, which are mutants, Blacklore Elves, which are tech elves that inherited some of the tech from Blackmoor, Gentlefolk, which I would call hippie elves, Icevale Elves, which are the snow elves, Hudakans, which are jackalheads from Egyptian mythology, Genites, which are mounted archers, Kogalor dwarves, Krugel orcs, Cubits, so named because they are the height of 1 cubit, about 18 inches, Malfagi lizard men, Merry Pirates, Millennians, Greeks, Nithians, which are the Egyptians, Oltecs, which seem to be the Mayans, Shadow Elves, Tanagaru, Aboriginal tribespeople, Traldar, which are kind of like Romans, and Tribesmen of Nethar, which are Stone Age tribes. When taken in their entirety, it can be quite comical to imagine Errol Flynn pirates, sci-fi elves, and the brownies from Willow all in one party. That said, you certainly don't have to allow all or even any of these options, just know that they are there if you want, along with some hand-wavy explanations of how they all came to be there. I can certainly see equal merit in playing natives to the Hollow World or transplants slowly figuring out the secret origins of the place. It's a kitchen sink campaign, but it's a well-made kitchen sink campaign. The DM sourcebook takes a very different approach, with close to no crunch in the first 120 of its 128 pages. That is not to say that it isn't worth reading, as it is a pretty extensive history of both the Hollow World and the known world, starting with the story of Ka the Preserver's discovering the Hollow World and his gathering other immortals working together to shape it and preserve it as a museum of fallen empires, as well as protecting it from Lovecraftian burrowers whose purpose was to create chaos through their mind control powers. But working past its creation, we get a parallel history of all of its inhabitants, both in the Hollow World and the surface world as well. In this section, the Atlas, it provides histories and details on all the cultures presented in the player's book, getting to see what led to their actual arrival in the Hollow World and how that changed the landscape. I'm typically not a huge fan of massive fluff dumps, but this one I found to be very readable, with its parallel timelines making it feel like a history book. Next is a little over 20 pages on immortals, really establishing a Hollow World and known world pantheon, even stealing most of the Norse gods for good measure. This is a bit of a departure from most of BECMI, as it had taken a very neutral stance towards deities, essentially never addressing the situation. Well, here it is very clear their importance and connections to the cultures of the world. I like it. I think it gives purpose and meaning to the customs and cultures. The last section covers running a Hollow World campaign, detailing fish out of water games, and how to introduce players into this kind of a setting. Most interesting was the part regarding modifying the Hollow World by making it part of another setting, or by adding new areas. Because its purpose is to preserve lost civilizations, it stands to reason more will be added over time. I have long thought this would be a great twist to a campaign that had gone off the rails. Their homeland is destroyed and ported to the Hollow World, but they don't realize it. Almost like when the protagonist in Beetlejuice first die, they think they're just at home and only discover they died after some time and trial and error. This would require some planning and a good reveal, but done right could be a very memorable game. As most of the products of its era, it ends with an AD&D conversion rule section. And last up we have the adventure book, the smallest of the three, but perhaps the most important, with 2 full adventures as well as 5 adventure seats for different areas of the Hollow World. The adventures here do a nice job of highlighting the peculiarities of a Hollow World campaign. The first adventure in particular does a good job of slow rolling just what is happening, introducing a weird enemy, and then having a great reveal. The description of passing through the barrier and gravity slowly receding with water bubbles floating through the air was very good imagery. The other adventures are standard fare, but do highlight the peoples and beasts of the Hollow World. The end of the book has several pages of monsters. Unfortunately, far too many are dinosaurs previously covered in many prior releases. That all said, this book accomplishes the goal of establishing the setting as a unique and weird one, and it gives DMs a great jumping off point for Hollow World campaigns. The good and the bad. First, the good. A truly unique setting. Hollow World is unlike any other game setting that I've played. It really does capture that fantastical feel that an 80s campy fantasy movie would have. It really does feel like a game of Willow right on your D&D table. Number 2, the options. You get a ton of additional character options and monsters in this set, and it adds to the toolkit of any aspiring dungeon master. It's not limited to use in the Hollow World either, as all of these different cultures started in the known world. You could easily take these and play a historical version of the known world using the rules as set here in the Hollow World box. Number 3, have it your way. There's enough variation throughout this setting that you could run games of many different genres and styles and never have to worry about it breaking the setting. The setting is designed to have games that are Errol Flynn pirates. It's also designed to have games that are focused on brownies from Willow. It's also focused on having Aztec empires trying to take over the world and all of the fun gameplay options that go along with that. You can literally do nearly any type of game in this setting. Now, the bad. Number 1, it's scattershot. You get a little bit about this and a little bit about that and a little bit about the other, but you don't get an incredible amount of detail on any one area. That would be okay, except for the fact that these areas are all very unlike most of the different civilizations that you're accustomed to playing with. So that can create a little more work for the DM to try to fill in those gaps. Number 2, but I want to play that. You're going to run into some problems where you're going to have one player that wants to play the game straight, and he just wants to be his Azcan warrior looking to make a name for himself, where another player wants to play a cubit and ride around on a raccoon's back. And those two players are not going to likely enjoy the same game. I think that's worth dealing with and can be hedged by just kind of setting some guidelines about this is the style of game we're going to play this time, and these are the different options available in this particular game. Number 3. It's kind of hard to find. While you can pick up the PDFs of the Hollow World, the actual box set is getting harder and harder to find. The PDFs are fine. I think that they do a great job, and I've used them in my research for this video, but the maps in the PDFs are very, very weak sauce. It's hard to use those maps, and it's just hard to make them come across in the way that the original maps did. That said, it's not a game ender, but it's just something to know. If you want to pick up an actual box set, it's going to set you back some coin.
I am never going to financially recover from this.
And in order to play a full campaign, I would vastly prefer the box set over the PDFs. Summary. So that is the Hollow World, the eerie reflection of the known world and a look at its history and peoples of the past. It plays up a lot the ties of ancient civilizations to the real world, which I know is going to be a turnoff for some. But I have always found some degree of familiarity is a great boon to a DM trying to tell believable stories. Aside from that, many of the inclusions are very unexpected, and on the whole, it just works. For many, this will be a side jaunt of their larger campaign, but I could really see this being an incredible setting to run a varied and entertaining game. For example, there is a structure in the game called the Lighthouse, an odd thing to have in the land of the eternal sun, but it is something akin to the Library of Alexandria, a repository for all knowledge of history. Wouldn't it be fun to run a campaign as curators of such knowledge to be kept in the Lighthouse? I could see that being a great reason to have to travel, visit other civilizations, and explore the unknown. Everything a good old hexcrawl game is looking for. In my list of settings left for Dead by WotC, Hollow World seems to me to have the most mass appeal and would be a great one to dust off for your table today. But that's my thoughts, and I'd love to hear yours. Have you played Hollow World? If not, what parts appeal to you? Is there anything in the setting that is a non-starter for you? Tell me about it or any other thoughts you have in the comments section. Until next time, this has been Justin from Books, Bricks, and Boards. Good gaming, and God bless.